Gentlemen, what if I told you that being single isn't a weakness, a delay, or a problem to be solved, but a weapon to be sharpened? Society tells men that the longer you're single, the more undesirable you become. But the truth is, the longer a man is single, the more powerful he can become, if he uses that time right. Today, I'm going to show you why embracing your singleness isn't about waiting. It's about building. When a man spends time single, he's forced to face himself without distractions. There's no one there to soothe his insecurities, no partner to fill the silence, no relationship to hide behind. In that space, something powerful happens. He either avoids his reflection, or he steps into the mirror and starts leading himself. Most people don't realize that being single isn't just about not dating. It's about choosing to become the man who doesn't need anyone to validate his direction. He begins to craft his own discipline, structure his days, and define his standards without external input. This period becomes a training ground for self-leadership. He starts learning how to make decisions based on his values, not his emotions. He builds habits that sharpen his edge, whether that's waking up early, training consistently, mastering his finances, or pushing his limits in business or creative work. The longer he does this, the more confident he becomes in his ability to walk alone. And that confidence doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from earned experience. When a man leads himself well, he naturally steps into a higher level of masculine energy. He doesn't chase people for attention because he already knows his worth. He doesn't fold under pressure because he's used to holding himself accountable. This self-leadership becomes magnetic, not because he's loud or dominant, but because he's solid. People sense it. Women especially sense it. This is why time alone isn't wasted. It's refinement. It's growth. It's how boys become men, and how men become leaders. So the longer a man is single, the more he has the opportunity to master his inner world. And when he can do that, everything outside of him becomes easier to lead, including relationships. Because before you can lead anyone else, you have to lead yourself. When a man spends a significant amount of time single, something important begins to shift. His standards rise. In the early stages of dating or relationships, many men accept what they can get rather than choosing what they truly want. This usually comes from a need for validation, fear of being alone, or not fully knowing their own worth. But as time passes and a man learns to be content on his own, he no longer seeks connection from a place of emptiness. He starts becoming highly intentional about who he allows into his life. Without the noise of constant dating or emotional drama, he gains clarity. He begins to notice what kind of energy adds to his life and what kind drains it. He recognizes the difference between attraction and alignment. Suddenly, physical beauty alone isn't enough. He's paying attention to values, communication, consistency, and how a woman makes him feel long-term, not just in the moment. This elevation of standards isn't rooted in ego. It's rooted in self-respect. He's invested time in himself. He's built routines, systems, and a vision. So he's not going to hand over a front-row seat in his life to someone who doesn't bring peace, purpose, or partnership to the table. He stops tolerating mixed signals, emotional games, or anyone who treats him like an option. And here's the twist. When a man raises his standards, his energy changes. He becomes more selective, more confident, and less available to the wrong people. That scarcity creates value. Women sense that he's not just another guy trying to impress them. He's a man with options, choosing with discernment. The longer he's single, the less likely he is to settle. Not because he's bitter, but because he finally knows what he's worth. And that makes all the difference. When a man is single, for a significant amount of time, he's given a rare opportunity, an uninterrupted period to go all in on his purpose. Without the distractions of constant emotional attachments, date planning, or relationship drama, his time and energy can be fully directed toward what truly matters. building a life he's proud of. This is when a man begins to find clarity in his mission. He starts asking deeper questions about who he is, what drives him, and what legacy he wants to leave behind. This kind of solitude can sharpen a man like nothing else. He begins to chase goals with intensity, develop skills that set him apart, and create momentum in areas of life that most men neglect while jumping from one relationship to the next. His work, his fitness, his passions, all get dialed in. And with every step forward, he becomes more aligned with his true identity. Ironically, it's when a man stops obsessing over women that he becomes most attractive to them. Why? Because purpose is magnetic. A man who's on fire for his mission radiates confidence, direction, and independence. He doesn't need a relationship to feel fulfilled. He simply becomes a man who naturally draws people in because his life is already full. This doesn't mean he ignores relationships or doesn't want connection. It means he no longer depends on one to feel like a man. He chooses connection when it aligns with his vision, not as a way to escape loneliness. And that shift, from needing to choosing, changes everything. So the longer he stays single, the more time he has to build something powerful. And when the right woman does show up, he's not asking her to complete his life. He's inviting her into something already great. That's leadership. That's purpose. That's power. When a man has been single long enough to experience the full range of emotional independence, he naturally becomes less tolerant of games. He's no longer impressed by surface-level attraction or flattered by attention alone. Instead, he values peace, honesty, and clear communication. This shift happens gradually. At first, he might still fall into patterns of chasing unavailable women or trying to decode mixed signals. But over time, he grows tired of the emotional noise. He learns that his energy is valuable, and he refuses to waste it on confusion. This is when emotional maturity kicks in. He begins to recognize manipulation not just in obvious forms, but in the subtle ones. Delayed replies meant to provoke anxiety, passive-aggressive remarks disguised as jokes, hot and cold behavior meant to test his interest. These once might have thrown him off balance. Now they're deal breakers. He sees through them immediately and calmly removes himself from the dynamic, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. The longer a man is single, the more he realizes that peace is a non-negotiable. He has built a life of clarity and purpose, and anyone who enters that space must bring harmony, not chaos. He doesn't feel the need to prove himself or convince someone of his worth. He already knows it. And that confidence creates a natural boundary, one that weeds out those who play games and attracts those who move with sincerity. This doesn't mean he becomes cold or emotionally unavailable. Quite the opposite. He becomes more present, more authentic, and more in control. But he gives his energy only to those who deserve it. The man who has mastered his singleness has mastered his emotional standard. And once that bar is set, it's never lowered for temporary pleasure or fleeting attention. When a man remains single for a long time and uses that time wisely, he becomes something very few people are prepared for. Dangerous, in the best way possible. Not because he's reckless or out of control, but because he becomes deeply focused, emotionally stable, and almost impossible to manipulate. He has nothing to prove, nothing to chase, and nothing to fear. That kind of man is rare, and that's exactly what makes him powerful. This type of danger isn't about being threatening, it's about being unshakable. A man who has built himself alone has faced doubt, loneliness, rejection, and pressure, and he's learned how to move forward anyway. That inner strength becomes part of his presence. When he walks into a room, he doesn't need to announce himself. People feel it. His confidence is silent. His calm is intimidating. His standards are unwavering. He doesn't overreact to games, doesn't beg for affection, and doesn't fear walking away from something that doesn't serve him, because he's not afraid of being alone. He's already mastered that. And once a man no longer fears solitude, he becomes free. Free to choose what's right, not just what's convenient. Free to say no without guilt. Free to build relationships from a place of strength, not weakness. Women feel this energy. They may test it, question it, or even be drawn to it without understanding why. But the truth is simple. This man has turned his solitude into strength, and that strength into presence. He's the man who can walk away from anything that compromises his peace, and who only welcomes what adds true value to his life. The longer he stays single and intentional, the more dangerous he becomes, not for others to fear, but for himself to respect. Because he knows exactly who he is, and that's rare. So the next time someone asks why you're still single, look them in the eye and say, because I'm building something bigger than a relationship. I'm building a man worth being with. Gentlemen, don't fear singleness. Use it. Because the longer you walk this path alone, the more unstoppable you become. Thank you.